And when this thing passes and the wind calms down a bit, we're going to make for Bermuda under a smaller sea state, less pressure on the rudder. Also, because that stainless piece had shifted up the rudder shaft, it was clunking around. Like, not just was it not creating the watertight connection, but it was allowing the entire rudder post to clunk hard. So it was clunking so hard that if you were standing in the cockpit, you could feel it through your feet.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Andy. Sunny day here in Sweden today. Beautiful outside. Last day of February. Hard to believe. Adrienne, that Swan 70 that we have chartered from Gura Krantz, they just made landfall in the Canaries yesterday or the day before yesterday. I haven't yet debriefed with Eric, but I'm very excited to hear about their trip. They were at sea for 17 days, sailing north around the Azores High. So that was a cool trip. It sounds like we're going to be doing more on Adrienne, so stay tuned to the quarterdeck and our mailing list if you want to hear about opportunities when that opens up. Don't know exactly what is available on the bunk front, but as usual, go to 59-north.com/bunks to see that. I do want to make a mention that I've been doing quite a bit of stuff on the quarterdeck lately. So if you want to support the podcast, the best way to do that is to go and be a member on the quarterdeck. You get all kinds of content archive on there that me, August, Mia, and the rest of the gang have produced over the years. We've been doing this for 5 years now, I guess, as well as the interactive chat with the other members, access to myself personally, and August and Mia, and all the rest of that. So check out quarterdeck.59-north.com, and we hope to see you on there, our online platform for all things seamanship. This episode's another one with Matt. It's, as usual, Matt is fantastic. I need to make a recommendation. The story Matt tells today, he told basically in real time on his podcast, which is called Single Handed. So Matt had his recording equipment on during this delivery and was like recording updates as this was happening and put it together as a podcast. And Lee, the producer of our show, basically said it was like the most amazing seamanship story he's ever heard. And that's what prompted me to actually interview Matt about it. So if you want the firsthand account of this in the moment, highly recommend you go and listen to Matt's podcast called Single Handed. And lastly, Matt is doing some trips for Ocean Research Project up to Greenland. So you can actually jump on Marie Tharp, his research schooner in Annapolis, and sail up to Greenland this summer. You can check out what's available at oceanresearchproject.org. I think it's Ocean Research Project, oceanresearch.org. You can Google Matt Rutherford Ocean Research Project and you'll find it. All right. That said, here we go. On the Wind is presented by Forbes Horton Yachts, our friends in Annapolis. They can buy or sell your dream boat, even if it's not one of theirs that is listed. Get in touch with Forbes Yachts at FORBES. That's ForbesYachts.com. In case you missed it, our monthly Skipper's Briefing newsletter now features one of our favorite boats that Forbes is listing, depending on the month. This month, I have selected an Alden 44 Mark II. Really unique boat, really classic, beautiful boat. This one's called Scout. It's in Harrington Harbor in Annapolis, and I sincerely suggest you check out our newsletter or go to Forbes' website and check out this listing, even if you just want to look at cool boats, because this Alden 44 is special, and it's also a really unique kind of like grayish blue color. So check that out, and check out the rest of Forbes' listings at ForbesYachts.com. Thanks again to Forbes for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. On the Wind is also presented by the Boat Doctor, custom electrical systems so you can cruise with confidence. Connor Smith, former guest of the podcast, has been doing some stuff on the quarterdeck for us as part of his sponsorship. So if you check that out, he did 2 videos so far on using a multimeter, specifically using a multimeter that clamps around a wire, and why that's so important in order to measure amps. Measuring amps in a DC system is crucial to both troubleshooting and setting up systems in the first place. So part of Connor's thing at the Boat Doctor is teaching all this stuff, and there's 2 great videos that he put on the quarterdeck for us. You can check out everything that Connor does at Boat Doctor USA. That's BOATDRUSA.com. Thanks again to Connor and the Boat Doctor for sponsoring this episode of the show. You're listening to On the Wind, my podcast about offshore sailing. I'm your host, Andy Schell. Matt Rutherford returns yet again to the podcast. I've lost count how many this is. This time he comes to us from his outpost in the Philippines. It's always fun to catch up and shoot the shit with Matt. This time, I really wanted to hear about his near sinking on a Caribbean delivery last fall. Matt talks through the entire ordeal from riding out a gale with all the pumps running, to nearly losing the rudder out the bottom of the boat, to ultimately his safe landfall in Bermuda. So beautiful backdrop. Where are you? Where are you? Let's start there.
I'm in Manila.
So this is, I was going to say that this sounds very ignorant, but I don't know where Manila is other than somewhere in Asia.
Well, they had the Thriller in Manila. That was that whole Muhammad Ali fight. But yeah, it's in the Philippines. It's one of the largest. It's bigger than LA. It's one of the most densely populated places on Earth. Let me turn off the air conditioning. But yeah, it's one of the most densely populated cities on Earth. So I'm right in the middle of it. I'm in Metro. This you can see behind me, which people listening can't see. This is Manila Bay, which I could try to show you a little better there.
It's freaking sick, man.
All sorts of boats back there. Yeah, it's the ups and downs of it, but it's kind of a long story, I guess, why I'm here or what happened.
Well, we've that's what the podcast is all about, right? Telling long stories. Let's hear it.
Right, well, fair enough. So I had a crew member from the 2023 Greenland expedition, a guy named Adnan. I inspired him before I knew him to buy a 323 Pearson, which is a boat that I sailed alone across the Atlantic twice, 2008, 2010. He sailed it from San Francisco to New Zealand. It had been sitting there for 2 years. He wanted to donate it to the nonprofit, which was a nice gesture. And the deal was I was going to go over and try to sell it, kind of do a fire sale, really, just get rid of it. But there was a couple of problems. One problem was that it had all the original food and supplies from the Trans-Pacific, and it's been sitting there for 2 years in Opua, just getting moldy. So it was just an unbelievable disaster.
Did you go? Did you go to New Zealand?
Yeah, I went to New Zealand to do this. So it was multiple issues. There's the issue of the boat was like a moldy biohazard. Like you could taste the mold in the boat just standing in it. Yeah. And then I wanted to get it to a marina to clear. I had to gut it, including the upholstery. Like the upholstery was shot. It had like a monitor wind vane that was only a couple years old. It had like $6,000 worth of battleboard lithium batteries, a new electric motor. I was going to sell it for the price of the wind vane. I mean, for the price of a used wind vane. Like we're just trying to get rid of the damn thing at that point, just so I could, get back the cost of the flight. Would have been a great deal. Couldn't get it into the marina because they wanted insurance. They wanted to insure the boat, and I was trying to. And his temporary import permit had expired, and then it was problems with customs, and then I got COVID, and I had COVID. I had a quarantine in a hotel for a week. In the middle of my time in New Zealand with pretty decent COVID. I mean, I've had it worse before. At that time, I sailed from Lunenburg to Nuuk, Greenland with COVID. Was definitely worse. But anyways, it still sucked. And then it rained for the last 3 days I was there after I got out of quarantine. So the whole thing was a giant debacle, shit show of a situation. And you can imagine I didn't sell the boat. But I was already on this side of the Pacific Ocean, and I'm trying to get a break because I have a 5-month expedition next year going up to Greenland, another one of these 10,000-mile 5-month expeditions. I'm just trying to get off the boat for a couple months just to get a break from it. So it's like, well, I'm on this side of the Pacific, and I haven't been to Asia in a decade. Last time I was in Asia, I sailed Harbor 29 from San Francisco to Yokohama, Japan, nonstop, which is a whole nother story. So it's been a decade, and more importantly, I don't speak shit. Like I barely speak English at this point, and so I have this long, and I travel a lot. I've been to dozens of countries, and it's a very, very typical situation for me to be in a country and not be able to speak to anybody, or very rarely. And you walk down the street, it's not like you can just strike up a conversation or ask a question. It's always this kind of painful situation. I'm used to it, so it's not like literally painful. Obviously, like I've traveled for years and years, but in the Philippines they speak English. Like everybody speaks English pretty much. They have their own language, obviously, and they have dialects on top of that. but English is extremely common. So, and they all watch Netflix in English. Like I can literally walk down the street and talk to just about anybody, which is a very new thing for me. Like, so it was just a concept. Like I'm on the other side of the Pacific, hadn't been to Asia in a decade. I rode that bicycle through Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Thailand years ago. I really like, never been to the Philippines. So yeah, man. So I was like, fuck it. I'll go to Manila, and I want to finish my book. Just part of what I'm doing. I've got some video editing to do because our 2023 camera person left early on because she kind of sucked, even though she was a Rutherford. She had my same last name. Really disappointing. But anyways, obviously no actual, we weren't really related. But so yeah, and then I'm trying to write grants. I'm trying to get, I got to fund this expedition next year. Nicole's busy writing scientific papers right now, so she's kind of, which is what needs to happen. She needs to publish scientific papers from the 2022, 2023. And last year we had a plastics project we did in the Chesapeake, a 2-part plastics project, which Sophie was there for part of it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Ryan and Sophie. Yeah.
Yeah, she was our French chef for a week.
Oh, she spoiled you.
Yeah, she's a hell of a cook.
Yeah, she is.
So that was an easy project. It was in the Chesapeake. It's a big, heavy boat. So, she was loving the fact we weren't, in 40 knots, we weren't really getting knocked around that bad compared to a Beneteau or any lightweight sort of boat out there.
So long story short, you're just hanging out in Manila.
Long story short, I have this beautiful apartment with the overlooking the Manila Harbor. It's a little bit chaotic on the streets because I'm like in the middle of Metro Manila. This is not like a tourist area. So on the streets, it's like I just got back from the grocery store 2 seconds ago. And, and it's kind of sad in some ways. Like I saw a little homeless kid. They couldn't have shoes. So they tied water bottles to his feet, and he was like slipping around, and he fell like on the ground, like right in front of me. Cause he couldn't, it's hard to walk with water bottles strapped to your feet. So it's just like, I don't know. There ain't nothing fair about this world we live in, and I don't know what karma or people think about karma. What did that kid ever do to anybody to be, like 3-4 years old and homeless on the streets of Manila, But anyways, it's yeah, I don't know, man. I'm just trying to get work done here. I do walk around here a bit. I don't care about nightlife. I don't care about clubs. Like I don't care about any of that shit at this point in my life. I didn't even care about it in my 20s, really. I did that shit when I was a teenager, but I've been done with it a long time. So I'm mostly just work, and then there's a nice park next door. I go walk over there. There's a million. This is one of the most densely populated cities on earth. So there's just people everywhere. And I'm going to try to get out of the city a bit. I honestly don't know if it was the right decision in some ways. It's almost like there's so many people that it forces me to spend more time here working. Like it's easy for me to stay in my nice apartment with air conditioning and my beautiful view, just because of the chaos that's down on the streets below me. If I was in a beautiful like beach, palm tree part of the Philippines, it'd probably be more of a distraction, however weird that sounds. And I do want to get this last part of the book done, which is really the nonprofit section. I got the other parts; they're not done, but I got I'm trying to get a first draft.
Right? Yeah. You got yeah. So
yeah,
important non-sailing question: did you watch the Super Bowl on Sunday?
Jesus Christ, that was a rout.
Did you watch it?
Yeah. A friend of mine in Canada gave me like a code, and like I was able to punch it in some VLC thing.
Yeah. VPN.
Yeah, he cheated somehow and gave me this code that I could punch in. So I was able to watch it at like 6 o'clock in the morning or something here in the Philippines.
Well, I watched it because it's Philadelphia. It's my team, and I'm in Sweden. The game didn't start until 12:30 at night here, so I was up till 5 a.m. But fuck, man, it was the best. I'm sorry about your Browns, but man, like if you're gonna have a team in the Super Bowl, like that's what you want. Like they demolished the Chiefs. It was so delightful. I was so pleased. The middle of the night, I actually went to bed for a couple hours, woke up, and just had like I was alone in my house. Axel was sleeping up at Mia's mom's house. Mia was in Antigua. So I was just like screaming at the top of my lungs and jumping around the living room, and it was delightful. But I know you're a football fan, so I was curious if you watched.
Yeah, no, I watched it. It was a cakewalk for you guys, and as a football fan who doesn't care about either of those teams, I wanted to see a game. and it wasn't.
Right.
It was like they were playing the high school team or something. It was just, I think they had 20 yards at the end of the second half or something, like Kansas City.
Kansas City had 23 yards in the first half. It was the best. It was the best thing ever. Like as a football fan, but an Eagles fan, like I did not want to see a game. I wanted to see exactly that. They just buried Mahomes. It was so good.
Yeah. Well, Cleveland sucks, and they're going backwards. And Myles Garrett wants to leave, and I hope he does.
Well, he might. They're talking about him maybe coming to the Eagles now. That's like a big thing.
Jesus
so
Christ, it's all you guys need.
You can be an Eagles fan.
No, I can never be an Eagles fan. I don't have any problem with the Eagles. I don't really care. There's only a few teams I really don't like, and that's basically the Steelers and the Ravens, and they're in my division. Outside, what's the Broncos? John Elway made me cry when I was a kid, the driving the fumble back in the 80s. I remember that still to this day. And the Cowboys are just a bandwagon team, but yeah, whatever. It was good for you. And I was thinking, I was like, the only person that's really enjoying this game right now is an Eagles fan because
hell yeah, man.
Because it was, and you know what, if it was the Browns like that too, and it would have been the most relaxing game to watch ever.
Exactly. It was no stress. It was the best. Did you did you watch the halftime show? Are you a Kendrick fan?
Yes and no. I'm getting old, man. I'm getting to that point where I don't keep up very well. I listen to a lot of rap music. I listen to a lot of underground stuff, but I'm always behind these days. I don't keep up with it, but whatever. Whatever. It was fine, I guess. I don't really care.
I didn't. Yeah, I was like texting with my friends because I follow pop culture very marginally. So I kind of knew there was a thing with Kendrick and Drake and all this shit. But I was like texting my friends. I was like, hey, like what is I need some context here. But anyway. All right. So that aside, Super Bowl aside, what I really want to talk to you about, Lee, who produces my podcast, he heard you talking about this Bermuda delivery on your podcast, and he's like, dude, you got to fucking listen to Matt's thing. He's like, he had the craziest trip ever. You got to get him on the wind to talk about it. So that's when I first emailed you, hey, we should do a podcast. I really wanted to hear about this crazy trip, and I have not listened to your podcast about it, so I don't know any of the story other than that you almost sank going to Bermuda. So
right.
What happened? What was the deal? What were you doing, and what happened? Lee's words, I think, were Lee said he's like, it's like the best seamanship story I think he's ever heard of, like how you saved the boat.
Oh, well, geez, I guess you got to listen to the single-handed sailing podcast. That's the single-handed sailing podcast. The interesting thing is I because the way I do my podcast, I do it alone. I just take a microphone with me and deliveries. And so I've got a whole bunch of deliveries that I've done in the past where every 2-3 days, I just kind of do 15 minutes or something. Normally, it's not that exciting. Normally it's just a normal delivery. That was my 35th time taking a boat to the Caribbean or up from the Caribbean. So, a lot of times it's just the basic sort of whatever, headwinds.
How you want it. Nothing happens. That's the way you want it, right? It's just an easy trip.
Like your Eagles. It was like,
exactly.
You want the Eagles version of a boat delivery. Yeah. You want
nice callback, Matt. Perfect.
Yes. Thank you. That's my yeah. But yeah, so, I just, the boat almost sunk. And so I was able to catch it in real time, but I guess the story is it was a J40 from the late 1980s, which I think is quite an interesting boat because the J40 is a J boat that's a racer cruiser, and it actually has a proper live aboard interior. Like, you can live on that boat, you can cruise on that boat. It is, because it's a J boat, it does perform like you'd expect. It's not a bare bones J boat, it's not the J120s or any of that kind of stuff. It's a bit of a heavier one, but a great all-arounder, I think. If you want to,
I really like the cruising J boats for exactly that reason. They're fun and easy to sail, but you can still cruise them. Like I think that's I recommend those boats. I think they're cool.
Yeah, absolutely, and they're about $70,000 roughly. There's, I think, 3 or 4 on the market. At least there was back when I did this trip. And they're roughly, I don't know, 65, 70 grand. That means you got to put 30 into it, of course. Every one of these boats probably. And the owner had put a lot of money into this boat. New rigging, had a new engine, had a beta. I don't know, knew this, knew that. The guy had sunk probably 50 into it or something.
And you were taking it south for him, or was it a new owner delivery deal?
I mean, I delivered this guy. This guy had it was an odd delivery I did about 3-4 years ago. He had a Pearson 37, a late generation, because they went out of business in the 90s, and it had a self-tacking jib. A Pearson 37 with a self-tacking jib, and it was the nicest goddamn one you ever seen. He put everything was new on it, new rigging, new standing, new running, new this, new that. He built some new interior in there, like some of the woodwork was new. I mean, it was gorgeous. I hate self-tacking jib sloop type boats. Those Dufours are doing it these days, and they're just terrible boats. But this had like a stainless pole on the deck that was kind of like a little bit of a U shape, and it had like a car that ran in this kind of U-shaped stainless pole. Just a little bit of a U.
That you see those in Sweden all the time. All the boats over here in the archipelago have that U-shaped thing that you can like buy. It's like a thing you can retrofit on any boat. So I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, and you need that if you want to have like a proper self-tacking jib. You can't just have like a track, like a main sheet track, or whatever, a traveler sort of thing. You need to have that. So, anyways, it actually did quite well. And it was one of these uneventful deliveries to the Caribbean sort of thing. Some years passed by. My friend Jimmy, who owns the rigging company, just said, he talked to this dude looking for a delivery, blah, blah, blah. I wasn't even looking for one, but, it's like, oh, all right, I would like to sail a J boat out in the ocean down to the Caribbean. Why not? So, yeah, it just kind of came together. And so, yeah, it's there it begins, Or a little bit of this cheap wine out here. You get it for a few bucks in the Philippines.
Where is it from? Is it French or?
Fuck, I don't know. Liebman's. You know what's funny? They have the nicest bottles of Carlo Rossi I've ever seen. They have all this Carlo Rossi and it looks all fancy. What? That's motherfucking Carlo Rossi. The shit you get in the jug in America for like $5. This is I don't know worth it. Yeah, some American stuff. It's just not bad. Anyways, so what happened? I was supposed to leave on this trip, and I was taking a guy with me who'd never been offshore before, but he had a decent amount of experience. And he was a lifetime police officer, did a lot of undercover stuff. He was about my age, getting closer, a little older than me, getting close to retirement. He did a lot of. It was funny because he was like a undercover cop busting like meth labs back when I had a meth lab. So yeah, it's funny. So we like share stories, about like whatever. He tells me
cops and robbers.
Yeah, it's just fun because
now there's a podcast, man. Jeez, should have recorded that shit.
I know, right? And he's been through enough. He's just the calmest dude you ever met, calmest guy ever. So he was really good person to have under this. We almost sunk in the middle of the ocean scenario. But what happened is they put a new rudder bearing in this boat, and a J40 does not have a typical rudder that I'm used to seeing. I'm used to seeing either a stainless steel rudder post, or some people are doing these days, which I don't really like, is an aluminum rudder post. I don't, obviously it's better to have stainless if you can do it. I think people.
There was a Swedish built boat that sank going across the Atlantic in the Ark last year because the aluminum rudder post sheared in half.
Yeah, well, you get pitting just like you do with stainless, right? And
yep.
It's not as strong. So So yeah, anyways, this has like a fiberglass thing. It's like the size of your thigh or something, it's like 6-7 inches around, a big thigh, Miles Garrett thigh. And so it's this big old fiberglass post, and it's a PYI rudder bearing. PYI is that's a well-known company. The long and short is that the boatyard, and it was Harchie's boatyard, but they do kind of redeem themselves at the end of the story here. They had a guy put it in, and he didn't put it in properly. And so the day before I was supposed to leave, they did a sea trial, and it was leaking bad. And it was coming up from the lower. There's like a lower bearing and an upper bearing, and it was coming up. They just didn't put enough goop in there, essentially. Like a 5200, or in this case, it's a Sikaflex version of a 5200. And so they pulled it out. They threw it all, ripped it all apart, put it all back together, and took it on a little sea trial in the West River in Chesapeake, which is, flat, calm shit. Everything seemed all right. Okay, let's go. I got to go. I had Christmas was coming up. And I was trying to see my dad on Christmas because he was going to be alone on Christmas if I didn't get to see him in Ohio. So and of course I got this crew. He's got a wife. He needs to be there for Christmas, yada, yada. So we're backing up to the holidays. We got to go. We got to get out there. And everything seemed fine. We're crossing the Gulf Stream. heading out, doing the old 600 miles out, 900 miles down general routine. And one of the water tanks was leaking. They had 3 water tanks, and one of it was leaking, and whatever, it wasn't that big of a deal. I always bring a lot of spare water on deliveries. I bring a gallon per person per day, generally speaking, of spare water. So whatever, and I knew that because I tasted the bilge water. You always got to taste bilge water to see if it's salt or fresh. It always sucks to do it, but anyways, I did it. It's fresh, okay, whatever. It's a tank. And I noticed,
hopefully when you're tasting it, it's salt fresh. The third option is sewage, which is not what you want, or diesel. Fourth option.
Well, there's always diesel in there. There's always
that's right.
It's the bilge. There's always some oily diesel shit in there all the fucking time. So you just deal with it. I've had diesel in my mouth more times than I can remember at this point. Honestly, like I don't really care. It doesn't taste as bad as it sounds, but it's never fun. But anyways, so I get to the other side of the Gulf Stream and it's still coming. And, and I'm seeing it and I'm thinking, wow, damn, this tank is, and I tasted it again and it was salt. And I'm like, oh shit, and now we got to figure out what it is. And I had a pretty good idea right off the bat that it was probably, something with this rudder because there was some issue earlier. And what it is there's a stainless steel sleeve that goes around the fiberglass part of the rudder post. And they used the wrong epoxy on it. They used some kind of like vinyl Lester epoxy that just didn't adhere properly. And it was traveling up, and that is the thing that creates a watertight connection. There's something called a green lip seal, and it's the combination of the stainless steel sleeve that meets this green lip seal that keeps water from coming in. Even then, you can get a tiny bit of water coming in, even when it's done properly. I found out later, but we're talking about like a traditional stuffing box. You can get a tiny bit of water off that. It's not a big deal. But this had moved up. And actually, it shifted a little bit, and a lip of it caught on the fiberglass, which is the only reason why we didn't initially sink. Because had it popped out completely, the amount of water coming in from 6 inches around would have been catastrophic. So the weather window was that it was just about to turn north and strong. So it was one of those Gulf Stream situations where it's like we got to get across the Gulf Stream, and once it goes north, it's going northeast. At like 30 some knots or something, like the door closes behind you, which is fine. I did this on a delivery on an Oyster 53 not long ago, where I had this little weather window. We got across, we got to like 5 hours after we got out of it, spun around to the northeast, 30 knots, 35 knots, and just blasted south.
I was gonna say that's what happens. You leave on a northwesterly, get across before it swings northeasterly, and then once you're across, you've got downwind. That's the ideal.
Yeah, I made it in like 8 days or something on it. So
yeah.
The Caribbean. And I had this crew member with me that was so seasick for 3 days. I was single-handed for a few days. He was on the floor. I couldn't get him off the floor, like into a bunk or into like a settee. He was just in the middle of the floor. I just step over him. And it was like that for days, and I just went, it was kind of nice because I felt like I was single-handed again. And it's been a long time. So I was kind of like, and obviously the watch schedules are a little different when you got a comatose dude on the floor. But anyways, that's a whole other story. But that was a fast delivery. So we crossed the Gulf Stream. I don't cross the Gulf Stream in any kind of northerly wind more than like 5-10 knots, because the Gulf Stream is a hazard. So, and you got to respect it or it'll spank your ass. So anyways, we get across. Everything seems okay. I find this leak. It's pretty substantial. I'm thinking we need to turn around and get our ass back, but we can't. The door is closed. And then we're talking like 3-4 days of these winds. And there's just low pressure after low pressure. It's all, the weather forecast is pretty fucked, which is fine. Again, if you're going south, right? You ride that thing down, those lows, the next low is going to go north of you. You're going to be south of it by then. Who cares? But that ain't an option anymore. So what's the closest port? That's Bermuda. But Bermuda is over 400 miles away at this point. We got to get to Bermuda. It's our only option. We can't sit here by the Gulf Stream. That's where we got to go. And so the leak got worse. I got to even remember this because it's one of those. It's like that story. Remember that time I found that 48-foot abandoned swan in the ocean?
Yes, I do.
So much dumb shit happened in like 5 days that it's hard to recount all the dumb shit that happened. But anyway, so we're heading over and we're making good time. But as we're moving along and as we're going faster and as the sea state's picking up, it's shoving more and more water into the boat. We're having some of the problems with the bilge pumps. So I'm having to swap around. We had a 750 gallon an hour pump that just couldn't keep up with the water. So I swapped it out with a 2,000 gallon an hour pump. We had another 2,000 gallon an hour pump with a float switch, and the float switch failed after like a day of just because it was going up and down and up and down. And so we were having to start to babysit the bilge. We took another that 750 and stuck it. We had like 5,000, damn near 5,000 gallon per hour in there. And, the 2,000 was struggling to keep up with it. And it was starting to get to the point where both of the 2,000s were starting to struggle to keep up with it. And so we just had to heave to. I basically was like, look, the sea state, I mean, normally you'd keep moving, but the sea state is just getting to such an extent, we're getting gale force, like lower gale force winds. And it's just shoving. As the boat comes down off a wave, it's just force is just shoving water through, like, massive amounts of water through there every single time, every few seconds, basically. So we heave to. And once you stop moving the boat, once you heave to, the amount of water coming in the boat dramatically decreases. It's still coming in, but it's not nearly the same amount of force. So, all right, let's wait this fucking thing out. And when this thing passes and the wind calms down a bit, we're going to make for Bermuda under a smaller sea state, less pressure on the rudder. Also, because that stainless piece had shifted up the rudder shaft, it was clunking around. Like, not just was it not creating the watertight connection, but it was allowing the entire rudder post to clunk hard. So it was clunking so hard that if you were standing in the cockpit, you could feel it through your feet.
Oh God, that's got to be so nerve-wracking.
Yeah, it sucks. It's just like another thing, and it's just like, and you're wondering if this fucker's going to fail. So you got your we had a brand new. The owner did buy before we left a brand new. It was a cheap one, but it was a life raft in a valise bag, a 4-man. I never even heard of the company. So, I mean, it was like, what's that Plastimo? What's that super cheap company? I had one of them in the past. What's the cheapest life raft you could buy in a valise bag?
I don't know.
God, what the hell was it? It starts with an R, I think. I used to have one. That's why. Anyways, it was cheaper than that shit. But it was brand new, so who cares? It probably works, And so we got the life raft. We stuck it right in the middle of the boat, valise bag. We got the EPIRB. We had a Iridium Go. We had everything set up, right? We had a ditch bag. I threw some extra stuff in it. We were ready to get off that boat. Like, at any time, had it like fail. And had it failed, we'd have had like some minutes to get off, But
yeah.
And like I said, this crew member was calm the whole time. Like, I was calm about it. He was calm about it. I didn't really feel that concerned, honestly, even though, at this point we're like 300 miles from anything, halfway between Bermuda and the East Coast, hove to, or before we were hove to even. But, it's just like we see boats, you see freighters out there, like a couple, 2-3 times a day, you see a freighter out there. You got an EPIRB and a life raft and a sat phone and a cell phone that connects to your Iridium Go. I mean, I can sit there and call you up from a life raft, do a podcast from a life raft, So, and it would suck, but it wouldn't be that bad, right? We got water.
Were you in touch with the owner? Like, did the owner know what was going on?
I did, and he got the Coast Guard involved, which I didn't mean for him to do.
Yeah.
Well, I did and I didn't. I said, hey, you should probably let the Coast Guard know that, like, we might sink or something.
Like a pan kind of.
Yeah, exactly. A pan. Like, we're not trying to, like, and we see this fucking, whatever, was it like a C-47 or one of those big, like the.
Oh, they flew a plane over?
They flew a goddamn plane over. And so it happened. I didn't know it was going to happen. And all of a sudden, John, the crew, he was like, hey, I think the freaking Coast Guard's flying over. I'm like, oh, shit.
Oh, wow.
So we get on the VHF and they're wanting to drop like a industrial bilge pump to us. I don't even know what it looks like. I don't know if it's gas powered or what the hell it is. And I'm like, no. Like, no, we don't, I don't want nothing. Just like, but thank you. Like, thank you guys. I appreciate it, but we'll be all right. Like, if we sink, we'll let you know. But, just like.
If we sink, we'll let you know.
But we got an EPIRB, I mean, you'll know.
Yeah.
You guys are going to be the first to know, probably, So, but in the meantime, it's all good. And so they buzzed around, and I talked to him for a second, and everything was fine, whatever. I also started talking to Bermuda radio at this time.
Oh, yeah, they're great. Those guys are awesome.
Yeah, because we're going to Bermuda. And really, I talked mostly to Bermuda radio it took us 9 days to get to Bermuda. This whole thing just drug out. So anyways, we're hove to for like 30 hours waiting for this like kind of a light gale, 33 knots, I don't know, whatever, to pass by.
What do they call that? A yachtsman's gale.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. And being hove to, I mean, we every once in a while you get hit by a wave. At one point, we got slammed by one wave, and John thought we got hit by a boat, like because it hit so hard. He'd never experienced that, like a breaking wave, just bam. And it did feel like we got hit by like I don't know, like a small Honda Civic or something, because the whole boat jolts hard and it sounds like it's about to cave in. But it's just a wave. I know what it is, but it's surprising as shit if you're not used to it. And he jumped up looking around, like I would see him run up, jump up, because when we're hove to, we're keeping a different watch schedule.
Right?
Like
yeah,
one of us is sort of on watch. I'm just kind of reading a book inside, getting up every few minutes, looking around.
Yeah, looking around. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and we do have an AIS that's still working on the boat, so we can, and it goes both ways. So the ships can see us, we can see them, which is a good peace of mind, right? So anyways, I watch him run up to the hatch. I hear this bam, and the whole boat jolts really hard. And he runs up there and looks around, and I'm just kind of smiling because it's like, yeah, it's just a wave. But he's like, oh, I thought we got hit by a ship. So I mean, a little bit of excitement. But I'm sitting there trying to make coffee, like in the morning, about halfway through this 30-hour period, roughly, right? And it's fine. The boat heaves to well enough. The J40 did a fine job. And I'm sitting there and I hear this noise. The goddamn sail ripped in half, the mainsail.
Oh shit.
Yeah, it had 3 reef points, but it was an old. The owner called it the delivery main. He had a delivery main and a racing main. And luckily, I did have a racing main on the boat. But anyways, it was blowing too hard. So the thing fucking rips. You hear the boom kind of drop, because the sail just ripped in half. I'm like, what in the hell is that? So I go out and look. God damn it, the sail's ripped in half. Completely blew out. And, of course, now it's a little hard to heave to because you don't have a mainsail. You just kind of go beam on. It's like lying a hull. We kept the backwinded jib. We kept the rudder was actually doing a decent job to keep us at least beam on to the seas. We didn't have any more big waves. Being beam on is never a great thing. I hate lying a hull. Lying a hull is my least favorite heavy weather tactic. But I don't know if you ever read any of Richard Henderson's book. Richard Henderson wrote a good single-handed book. He's dead now, but he wrote a book called East of the Azores about sailing to the Azores. He got hit by like a force 10, and him and his family, and they lied a hull for 30 hours in a force 10 and claimed that they had no problems. I wouldn't do that personally because I hate that tactic because you're just beam on to whatever the sea state is.
Yeah, but yeah, I had to do that once on my dad's boat. For 12 hours, whatever, and it wasn't big waves or anything, but it was horrendous. Just like being on the boat during that was just miserable. It's
almost better when you have a lot of wind because at least
yeah, totally.
With a backwinded jib, we were a lot more comfortable.
Yeah,
we weren't going back and forth. We were pinned over. So, anyways, we get through that shit. Our main is blown the fuck out. Our bilge pumps are running continuously at this point, right? Like you can't stop the bilge pump because the water's just coming in. And we look at the weather forecast, and there's another low, and it's even bigger. This one is like 45 to 50 knots sustained, coming right the fuck at us. We got like 2 days to get out of the way. It's the size of multiple states combined, the size of Texas or something. And it's barreling right at us. And this is one of them that we would have been south of, had everything worked out. And we can't stay there because the boat, we're going to lose the boat in that kind of condition with it already leaking, with the rudder knocking around like the rudder's knocking around and clunking all over the place. So our only option is to sail north to try to get really north and a bit east, kind of like we're sailing to like Newfoundland at that time, basically, more or less the angle. And so that's it, man. So we just got to go. And so we're going under jib alone because the sea state is still too much. And we're having to run the engine more and more to keep up with these bilge pumps because bilge pumps are just running 2,000 gallon an hour bilge pumps. Those things take power. And you got a couple of them running. And we start motor sailing on a low RPM, with a jib out. water coming in, whatever. We just got to get north. Who gives a shit at this point about the water? We got to get away from this goddamn storm. And so we go north a couple of days, and we get there just in time. It was kind of, it kind of sucked because we ended up getting further north than Annapolis. And I don't mean the mouth of the Chesapeake, but goddamn Annapolis. We're up there at like 40 at this fucking. We're like way north. The Bermuda's like 32. We're like way the fuck north of everything. But it's our only option. We got to, this storm is just it's a storm. It's not a gale. This is actually a fucking storm. So
you said you're just before. So this is like December. Before Christmas.
Yeah.
So you get some pretty gnarly winter storms.
It was like early December. It got delayed. The trip got delayed a couple times because of these boat issues and this rudder bearing and this, that, and the other. And I kept getting pushed back. I don't remember exactly when it was, but late November, December. I just remember Christmas being an issue.
Sure.
We ended up missing Christmas, but that's later in the story. But it's we get north, this big old system plows south of us, and we're talking Bermuda radio it was kind of annoying, honestly, because they're worried and they want us to check in every, like, I'm battleable. They want us to check in every like 6 hours, every like 3 hours at first. So like, I'm not going to do that. And they're like every 6 hours, like, dude, every 12 hours I'll write you something. If I sink, you guys will know. Like I need some sleep. There's only two of us here, and I'm the only one doing this shit. So anyways, the low gets south of us. We're able to drop down, and there's another low coming. And now we got to get down to Bermuda before the next low. And then the Coast Guard just pops back up again. The U.S. Coast Guard.
In their airplane?
No, in a ship. But it wasn't.
Wow.
But they weren't on the horizon. Like, I didn't see them at any given point. I think they were just out there. I think that they were out there in the vicinity or something. They heard about us. And the weird thing is, I hadn't talked to the Coast Guard in days. This was a 9-day situation that I'm blowing through pretty quickly. And there's a lot of other things that happen along the way. And this leak is just getting worse and worse and worse as it goes on, because the rudder's clunking hard. And it's.
Well, I was going to ask, was there nothing you could do to, like, did you climb back in there and try to fix it?
Oh, yeah. I did do something, actually, right before this. And I felt a lot better about it. When we got up there and we finally got north, because when this storm was coming, we had no choice. I had no choice to do shit except get out of the way. And it took like, I don't know, a couple of days to get out of the way. We just barely got out of the way in time. I was trying to, like, I don't know, reconstruct, deconstruct, however you want to say it. Like, what the fuck I didn't install this rudder bearing. I've installed rudder bearings before. I understand that Visconite is better than Delrin. If you want to have a traditional stainless steel, I did it with my own boat. I have my own crazy ass story in 2022, trying to get to the Arctic and all that shit, which I have no time to get into. I don't know this type. This is a totally different type of bearing system, right? And PYI is a good company. It's not that, but that I realized eventually that I didn't know that stainless steel sleeve had shifted up. It took me a while to figure that out because I'm just out there. I didn't install this. What I ended up realizing was that if this thing shifts up about another inch, the boat's going to sink because I'm going to completely lose all connection. It's already leaking bad, but I'm going to lose all of it, and the boat's just going to go down. So I took a drill. The guy did have a cordless drill, a little DeWalt, and some basic ass screws. I mean, he had really basic stuff on it, but it had some basic random screws. And I drilled little holes around the very top of that plate, and I buried screws in. So the screws kept it from going up further. It hit the screws and it stopped it from getting any worse. And I felt really good at that point. Like, it was a giant relief. And I said that on that podcast I did.
Yeah, that it's not going to be catastrophic. It's going to keep leaking, but it's not going to come off.
Yeah, I didn't know what the problem was for days. Like, I'm out at sea and I can squeeze in. I was in the back cabin. There's like a little aft cabin. There's this little door you can open that I can barely fucking squeeze through. I got to like worm my way, do some spelunking ass shit to get back and run around this other tank, and everything else. And then I can kind of like see the shaft, and I got some footage of it too, leaking like a bitch. But I haven't even put it out there to anybody. I should send it to you. I don't know if you can put it as podcast somehow. But
send it to me. I'll put it on the quarter deck. That's awesome.
20-second clip of water just shooting through this guy.
Yeah. Send it.
But anyways, I just put all these screws on the top because I figured out finally that this is what it was, and I felt a lot better. And I told John, the crew, and I was like, "Look, man, at least we figured out what generally is a problem, and I think we fixed it. Kind of. It was still getting worse because it was clunking hard, and every time it clunked, it was fucking up the seal. Slowly, worse and worse. It's like a boxer taking punches. Throw it in Manila. But
another callback.
yeah, I gotta do what I could do here. So anyways, we spun around. We were heading south to Bermuda. We're just going balls to the wall at this point. It's probably blowing like 25 or something. We got to get down there before the next system. We're going to run out of fuel because I've been running the engine to keep the batteries
to keep
charged.
The bilge pumps up, yeah.
To keep the bilge pumps running. I got to keep the bilge pumps running all the goddamn time. And this is a J40. It's not some thing with a massive battery bank. You know what I'm saying? So you're constantly dealing. It did have newer batteries, so that was nice. But still, it's flooded batteries. They're just some flooded ass, slightly better than Walmart fucking batteries in there. Penn, whatever, West Marine, whatever it is. And, what the hell is a Battery Warehouse there on Chickapin Road? That little place. That's where they came from. Yeah, that's where they came from. But anyways, it's so we're just going, and then this Coast Guard boat starts talking, and this guy. They were nice, but they were not as nice as Bermuda Radio. Bermuda Radio was nice. And they're like, you have to check in every 6 hours. I was like, fuck. All right, fine, Coast Guard. And, they weren't, like I said, they weren't near me. Like I never saw the boat. And I was trying to like keep them, calm too. I was just like, look, I think we got it under control. We're going to go there. It's getting worse.
Like, do you know who I am? Have you seen the crazy shit that I've done? Like, this is fine. I got it.
They don't care too much, but yeah, and we're running all bilge pumps. We're barely keeping up with it at this point, honestly. I'm, thinking I might have to bail this fucking boat or something. And it was blowing pretty good, but we rocket shipped because that nice thing about that J40. I mean, we were flying down, and ultimately, one little detail, which is a very important one too, is when we got north of that storm, it was one of those weird barriers between like fucked up winds and like 15 knots, where there's like a 20-mile window between the two. There wasn't a big dip, and we were just north, so we were in 20, and it was blowing like shit, not far from us. But the sea state, because it was coming out of the north, and we were north of it, it wasn't too bad. So we were able to put that racing main on, and it was nighttime. And I'm like riding the boom like a bucket Bronco. And it was one of these complicated, like Harkin track car ball bearing systems. So it wasn't just like putting slides up something. I'm like holding those little rings, what they call those cotter rings in my teeth, and they've cotter pins. And I dropped one on deck, almost fell in the ocean. And it went on for like hours trying to switch this damn sail out. But we did get it. Nothing fell in the ocean. It's a miracle. And so we had a main again. So we're just blasting down, and I'm just like, fuck it. I know we're going to take on a lot of water. We're going to have a sea state. Let's just get there. And before we run out of fuel, we can't run the alternator. We can't run the alternator. We run out of batteries, we sink, So yeah, we got to Bermuda, and I went to the White Horse, and it got, started drinking promptly at 10 in the morning when they opened. And, went to Hemingway's and got a Cuban, that little shitty. They had a decent cigar selection, but it's a shitty little liquor store. Cubans went up to $50. $50 a Cuban. It used to be 25 to 30.
$50, Jesus!
I almost didn't buy one, and I say almost because like fuck it. After this shit, I got $100 bottle of rum. I got like the Gosling's edition you can only get in Bermuda, like the Super Family Reserve.
Yeah,
like,
that's that stuff's really good. Anybody that goes to Bermuda, highly recommend getting the Gosling's Family Reserve, man. That is good stuff.
It's $100 a bottle, which is rough for rum, but it is delicious.
Well, I hope you sent the bill for that stuff to the owner because you saved his boat, or at least to maybe his insurance company.
No, I didn't, and I mean, it ended up costing them enough money, and I can never charge it. There's like an old tradition where you never charge an owner for alcohol. It's just like I'll go out and get a first meal on the owner, like if at the end of a delivery, but the alcohol is a separate bill. I always split it. So it's just, and that's with Simon Edwards. It's a Simon Edwards thing. He taught me that years ago, and he's a delivery skipper with 500,000 miles. He was 70 years old, been doing it longer than you and I've been alive, basically. So that was his thing, is you never charge an owner for alcohol. So
Yeah, it's good to have. I like it. I like those little moral things. That's cool. But wait, so what happened to the boat?
so it ended up staying. We hauled out because we're still sinking, but a lot slower when we're tied off to that seawall in St. George there. We came around to, we had to wait a couple days because it was blowing like a bitch. That system hit and we couldn't get around to the dockyard. You know, the dockyard, that's like where the America's
Yeah.
Cup is and all that.
Yep. Hmm.
Yeah. So that's where we had to get hauled out. And so we just had to wait. And which, like I said, I just spent a couple days in the White Horse drinking dark and stormies basically and doing internet stuff. I had my computer with me. They got Wi-Fi. And yeah, so we went around, we got hauled out. I went back to the boat. My crew went back to Indiana, Fort Wayne, where he's a police officer. He had to like at court because he had like, somebody he busted or some shit. He had to go to court to, I don't know, be there or something. And then we came back to the boat. Boat was in the water. They did a sea trial. We took it out. We didn't even get to that channel to go down to St. George, like that area, the protected area north of Bermuda, there in sort of by Hamilton or whatever, and it was leaking again like a bitch.
Oh.
And I was like, motherfucker! And it was night, and if we didn't leave right, we had a weather window. But honestly, it was a lot of headwinds. It kind of sucked, but it would get us there before Christmas. And
Where were you ultimately going?
To St. Thomas.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, the typical. It's always the Virgin Islands or Antigua. Every fucking delivery, it's one or the other, and it's mostly the Virgin Islands. But anyways, I had to spin around, come back, haul the boat back out of the goddamn water because they had to redo. There was another issue. Harchies, by the way, did end up covering the cost of all this haul out replacement.
I was going to ask you. You said Harchies redeemed themselves, and that's where this comes in. They
also
paid for it?
They paid half the delivery fee for the first part of the delivery, and they paid the entire fee for the boat getting hauled out and fixed. So I thought that was right
and
of them.
Did they determine that it was like they had? You mentioned something about epoxy. Was that what they determined was the problem?
Yeah, they fucked up in several different places, in several different ways, in several different installations. There was a lot of other things not working on that boat that they had to fix in Bermuda. Like the autopilot stopped working. Luckily, it was at the very end. All the electronics, because the NEMA 2000 backbone got wet because it got put in the wrong place. The batteries were switched. The house bank and the starter bank were backwards. The alternator was on. The regulator for the alternator, the Bomar regulator, was on all the time. And when you started the engine up, it instantly put load. It was a giant fucking Bomar alternator. It wasn't the stock. It was like a little beta, like the most giant fucking Bomar alternator you've ever seen in your life. And with serpentine belt, because of V-belt when you cut it. And so when you start the engine would die right away because you were starting it under load because the regulator was always on because it wasn't wired properly. There was an alarm on the fucking panel. The engine panel had an alarm that was always going off. And it was wired improperly. And I couldn't get the thing to shut the fuck up. And so I would turn the key off on the panel and it didn't do anything to the regulator because the regulator was wired. The regulator was always on. So I would just run with the panel off because if I turned the panel on, there was always beep all the fucking time. Or it's like beep, 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 beep. I mean, it was like there was like 1,000 other issues going on during this trip that I didn't even fucking talk about.
Classic boat delivery.
Yeah.
So was this?
It's not this way. Usually, there's an issue somewhere on a boat, but it's usually one little thing. There's always something. But
was this your closest call? You think, like in all the sailing crazy shit you've done, was this as close as you've ever come to sinking?
No, but this is the closest I ever came on a delivery, for sure.
Okay. What was the closest you ever came?
Going around the Americas. Well, I put the boat upside down in the Bering Sea going around the Americas. And then I was sinking for the last 16,000 miles. I had to bail the boat out with an empty can of corn because all the buildings stopped working. So, I mean, I think, I've come closer in other circumstances, but those are like different. Those are very different circumstances. The mentality is different. The whole thing is different. A delivery is a fucking delivery. You're trying to drive a bus or something, you're just trying to get there. You're not trying to, you're not trying to.
Did that make, because of that, did that make this situation like more maybe stressful or annoying because it's just like you weren't there for the adventure as in the same way you were like going around the Americas or whatever?
I wouldn't say it was annoying. I mean, it was what it was. You know, you got to like adopt a mentality appropriate to the situation because you're stuck in the situation. Like the door closed behind us because of the Gulf Stream and that system. We had to go to Bermuda, another storm. We had to get north. We figured out enough to be able to stop the sleeve going up by putting screws above it. We're going to run out of fuel, blah, 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 blah. It was action packed. You know, I mean, there was downtime, like 30 hours being hove to, just rip it in half, you know. But I had a thick ass book about World War II. That it was the Japanese. It was a third book in a third series. So it was like massive, like 1,500 pages or something. And so I'm reading this book, and this is like kamikazes and goddamn like just damage to ships, missiles and bombs going through multiple floors. And it's like 1,000 people die in this ship and 2,000 in this one and 500 in this one. And all I could think is, God damn, I don't got it that bad, you know, because it was so much worse in this book, you know, and the loss of life was just unfucking fathomable. You know, I mean, you're talking tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of Japanese sailors and American sailors to some extent, because those kamikazes were effective. But yeah, so it did help put it in perspective. I mean, I spent the whole time reading this super thick ass book. The fuck was it called? I have to try to remember.
Well,
anyway.
So I mean, leave it to you. You seem to always have the right attitude. But what was the name? Was his name John? Your crew member?
Yeah, John.
Well, how did he do? And what was his take?
Like how did he? Man, he was fucking great, and he came back. So I didn't finish the last part of it. Right, the boat we had to haul the fucking boat out again, and to fix it again because Harchies didn't put enough goop, so to speak, like the Sigaflex or the 5200 or whatever, on the top part of the upper bearing. So water was still coming up through, and it needed to be pulled apart and redone one last time on the top part. And so we ended up getting an Airbnb for a couple of days in Bermuda. Had a nice view, like I could see from the back porch a view of the ocean. It was quite nice. John took advantage of it, went around the island. He went everywhere, going to this, there, you know.
So he flew home after this whole ordeal and then came back.
Yeah, he was all about it.
Wow. Okay, so that tells you all you need to know. He clearly had an enjoyable adventure at the end of the day.
He was learning. He's going to buy a catamaran with his wife and sell his house when he retires from being a cop here in a couple of years, and they're going to go off sailing. He bought bilge pumps and switches during this little 10 days in between these, and was testing them in his backyard to try to figure shit out. So he got cool. He was nerding out on this. So for him, it was a good learning experience.
How did you find him?
He did volunteer work on the big boat when I was building the big boat. So he listened to my podcast, the Single Handed Sailing Podcast, the best podcast ever created about sailing.
Who came up with that title again? Just remind me.
Well, you might have reinforced my general thoughts on it, maybe. You might have had something to do with it. I'm just saying. Maybe not. I mean, I don't know. I don't remember.
Maybe not. That's cool, man.
So I knew him from that. I don't like sailing with people I don't know. So he came down a couple of times and worked on a boat. He worked hard. He's a relatively quiet guy, but he's super reliable. And he did a great job. We ended up, once the boat got fixed, finally got put back in the water again and fixed again, which we're going to miss Christmas. We're going to be out there for Christmas now. And then we had perfect winds going down. The wind went around to just north of east in the trades and 20 knots north of east, 25 knots. And we just fucking blew our way down to the Caribbean.
So back to your sort of ethics with deliveries. You mentioned that you don't pay for booze, or you pay for booze. You don't charge the owner for alcohol. I mean, it would have been pretty easy for you to just be like, hey, the boat's in Bermuda, it's falling apart. You got to find somebody else to take it south. Was that ever a consideration? How do you think about that kind of situation? Did you feel obligated to finish the trip?
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like not finishing the trip because I said I was going to do it. I don't like, if I say I'm going to do something, I said I was going to get the boat to the Virgin Islands. I'm going to get the boat to the Virgin Islands. And I had nothing to do with the installation issues. And and I did everything to keep her floating long enough to get to Bermuda. It took it 9 goddamn days to get to Bermuda, but yeah, no, I mean, I could have, I guess, bailed on it, but no, I mean, I felt obligated to get it done. I felt bad for the owner, honestly. I could have been a dick about it. I could have been like a what the fuck dick or whatever, but I wasn't. It was just, I felt bad, man. I felt bad for him because it's cost him a lot more money. Like, it's getting expensive now. Multiple haul outs in Bermuda, all this other shit, flying people in and out and in and out and in and out. So you got to fly us back and flies again. And, I mean, I just felt the whole thing. I just felt bad for the guy. And he's got a bunch of money. He's got a house in Martha's Vineyard, and he's got an apartment there and Virgin Islands. I'm saying he's super rich or anything like that either. But, he's an older guy who's been, successful in his life, and he's worked hard, and he's, builds like hospitals or some shit. And super nice guy. He's like the nicest guy you could ever meet. So yeah, I don't know. I just, you try to get a boat. I mean, what part of being a delivery skipper is you're trying to get this boat from point A to point B. Obviously, you're trying not to break anything, but you're also trying to make it stress-free, not just for you, but for the owner, for everybody, right? You don't want the owner to have to think about it. You just want to show up down there and be like, yeah, it's tied off and slip, whatever, C32 at any key, So yeah. I'll even ask the owner, do you want me to back it in or do you want me to bring it forward? I don't care. Sometimes they want it one way, because sometimes they want the privacy, whatever you want. How do you want me, whatever? You tell me what to do. I don't give a shit. I'm happy.
Man, I had a situation not nearly as dramatic as this, but we were taking this is maybe the last delivery I actually did. Me, my dad, and Tom Harrington, who taking a Tartan 4100 from Annapolis to somewhere near Fort Lauderdale, just north of Fort Lauderdale, I think. And we did a combination of like down the ICW and then out as the weather. It was like late fall. And it was really bad weather in Florida. So we were just going down the ICW, and we got to like the very last fixed bridge that we had to get under. But it was like a weird moon cycle, and the tide was abnormally high. And this was an abnormally low bridge, and we couldn't get under the bridge. And it wasn't going to be, and the weather was too bad to go offshore because of some issues with the boat. So we ended up having to leave the boat we were like 50 miles from the final destination, and I had to go to this marina, and it was like going to be 3 weeks till the tide was low enough to get under this bridge. I called the owner. I was like, hey man, like I literally can't get this boat any further, and I got to go home because I had to be somewhere or whatever. And we left it there. He was fine with it. He understood.
This was in the Carolinas?
No, in Florida.
Oh, in Florida. There's 3 bridges on CW in the Carolinas that have sunk lower than 65 feet or 63.
Because of the water level rise.
Well, they didn't build them as high as they should have. If the bridge sunk or what happened, but it's I know those stupid bridges too many times, but yeah, that happens. I mean, shit happens. I mean, I try to get the boat where it needs to go. Like I said, it's my 35th fucking time going back and forth, and they weren't all deliveries, but most of them were. Most of those
35, man. That's cool.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, it's just home waters, I mean,
right.
I really wasn't worried about being in a life raft, and I'm not saying that everywhere on planet Earth, and I'm not saying that under every circumstance. We had a brand new life raft, a brand new EPIRB. I had Iridium Go, and I had my cell phone that connects to it. I had a ditch back ready. We had it all ready to go. We could have been in that life raft in like 60 seconds if we had to be. With all that shit. I had crew who was cool and calm. He would have been sitting in that life raft, cool and calm with, So I mean, it was just like, all right, well, fuck it. If the goddamn thing sinks.
Plus, the Coast Guard knew you were there. Bermuda Radio knew you were there. You would have gotten picked up. I mean,
there's freighters going by every freaking, every so many hours. There's another freighter on the AIS. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, whatever. I mean, we're 100 miles offshore, but as long as you don't get hit by a big storm, right? A big storm is a difference. Nobody can do shit. Yeah. It's hard. You get 50 knots of wind or something, it changes the game. But
it's hard to get picked up.
To get north of that one system that was that strong. So
what was I going to ask you? Crap, I lost it. When are you back? How long are you in Manila? When do you go back to Annapolis?
Yeah. So, I'm going to shill my own shit for a second here.
Oh no, I know. I was actually going to give you that opportunity. So you basically. You documented all this. This is what I was going to say. You documented this whole story in real time. Is that what I'm hearing? You recorded this like as it was happening and then put that out as a podcast?
I do that normally, though. Like I said, I think it's this stupid little thing. It's Zoom cheap ass H2N that I've been having for years. So it's just this little mic recording device. I don't need to shit the equipment you have to have because you actually interview people. So you have to have I just talk to myself into a microphone and then people listen to it. So I don't need fancy equipment. So I just take it with me on deliveries, and it's very common. Like there's probably a dozen deliveries over the years on that podcast that I've done where I'm just out there rambling in the middle of the night on some night watch about the stars or whatever, or the boat or whatever the hell happens to cross my mind in that moment. So you just, so I always bring it and I always do it because it makes for a good podcast. Generally speaking, not this situation, but just generally speaking.
Yeah, cool.
I could talk about the boat, but so I did it. So if you go to the Single Handed Sailing podcast, some episodes ago, I don't know, whatever it was.
I'll look it up. I'll look it up and put it in the intro. Don't worry, I'll shill for you, Matt.
What I'm trying to shill is not that shit. What I'm trying to shill is direct competition to 59 North, kind of.
Well, I saw this. You sent a newsletter out the other day. I'll do it for you. You're taking people on the Greenland expedition, I guess, or at least part of it on with Marie Tharp, right?
So we're sailing from Annapolis to Greenland. We're doing a whole research expedition. We'll be up there it's a 5-month trip. 3 months of it will be in the Arctic, but we are selling berths 4 legs. So Annapolis to Newfoundland and Newfoundland to Nuuk in May and June, and then on the way back in September, which is Nuuk to Newfoundland, Newfoundland back to Annapolis. They're about 12 to 1,300 mile legs, $5,000, which is cheaper than Andy Schell could ever imagine for a leg that long. And it's for a good purpose. You're helping fund the expedition because all the money goes to the expedition. Nicole's busy writing scientific papers. We don't have time to write grants for this year's research. So the only way that I can fund this goddamn expedition is selling berths on the way up and the way down. I can't sell berths while we're in Greenland doing the research because it just doesn't work, basically. But if you want some good offshore experience, crossing the Labrador Sea is a son of a bitch. And it's got a pilot house, so we do have some protection. At least you're not out there getting hit in the face with a nice cold wave. But it's a boat. It's 2 mainsails and a cutter rig. 2 roller furlers, 2 mainsails, and it's slab reefing. We go out there.
I will happily shill that for you. I'll put that in the beginning of the episode and mention that to people. I think that's cool. And we're gonna have. I just sent you money from the last boat show, but hopefully we'll do the same thing in Annapolis next fall. We'll have the boat there and do the open house and the party.
Yeah,
it's always fun. Cool, man.
So
when are you back in Annapolis from Manila?
I'll be back in later March, and then I leave May 15th is the first leg. That's one thing about selling legs is now you have a strict schedule, right? You got to leave on a certain day. You're well aware of that shit.
I just wrote my latest column for Sail Magazine is exactly about sailing to a schedule and how annoying that is. You're breaking that cardinal rule of cruising. You're not supposed to do that.
Yeah, well, John Krishmir talked about that, about crossing the Gulf Stream in northerlies when he shouldn't have been, getting his ass kicked out there because he didn't want people to have to get new plane tickets. People had they have to get to port to fly home or whatever it is. So that's a hard part of it. And I bake a lot of extra time in these legs.
Same. Yep.
Yeah. So it shouldn't be a problem. And if we got to heave 2 for a couple of days out there, I don't give a shit. It's a big 100,000-pound steel schooner. That bitch heaves 2 beautifully. We can sit out there and, no problem. So whatever. It's they're good ocean legs if people want to get ocean experience. And like I said, it's a big boat, but it is 2 mainsails with slab reefing and 2 roller furlers. It's basically the same apparatus, just on a larger scale. So and then we'll be up there. I'll be back in March, and I'll leave May 15th, and I'll be back October 7th. So from May 15th to October 7th, I'll sail to the Arctic. We got a really big expedition. We can do a podcast about that later, I guess.
Absolutely.
We got this whole sea gas interchange with methane and carbon, understanding if a healthy fjord, the thought is a healthy fjord acts as a carbon sink, where an unhealthy, and I say healthy fjord as in a glaciated fjord, with a glacier that is a normal healthy glacier, it acts as a carbon sink, where one with a dying glacier actually releases methane in the water through a variation of permafrost being melted under the sea through just the instability of the carbon within the water, because you're changing the biogeochemistry basically of that fjord by dumping a shit ton of sediment in there, because that's what happens when a glacier dies. It just becomes this sediment muck that ends up in the fjord. So we're going to be doing it. I'll hopefully get up north of Connaught again, get up back up to Etah. I haven't been up there since 2016. Get up to 70. What was that? How high did you get to? 80? What?
80 north, man. I'm
That's
still
it?
farthest north. 80 exactly. We sailed across the line and then back again.
All right. Well, I got to get to 80,00001.
That's right. That's right.
Well, we'll be
at
at 79. We'll be at 79 at the very least.
It's all right. I'm still holding that over you. It's the one thing I've still got over you now.
You understand? I got a pinch point at fucking Smith Sound where I got like 20
Listen,
miles.
I'm just hearing excuses. I don't want to hear that.
Hey man, how many times you been around Cape Horn?
That's all right. Let's end this. That's a good place to end this. Lee, you can cut that last part out. No, man, it's great talking to you, and I guess I won't see you in person till Annapolis in the fall, but I'm sure we'll have you on the podcast again before then. So,
yeah. All right, sounds good. And go Browns, go Cleveland.
Thanks again to Forbes Yachts for sponsoring this episode of the show. Check them out at ForbesYachts.com. That's FORBES, ForbesYachts.com. Thanks also to Connor and Boat Doctor for sponsoring this episode of the show. Get in touch for all your electricity needs at BoatDoctorUSA.com. That's BOATDRUSA.com. On the Wind is the podcast about sailing, created by 59 Degrees North and hosted by me, Andy Schell, and also by August Sandberg, Emma Garshagen, and occasionally Ben Doer. The show is mixed and produced in Frederick, Maryland by Lee Cumberland. Ads are read by us, the hosts, and occasionally by 59 North's bosun Adam Brown and podcast producer Lee Cumberland. Episode artwork and website show notes are done by Laura Parent in San Francisco. The intro theme music is composed and performed by former podcast guest and musician Cameron Dale, while the outro music you're hearing now is, of course, by our friends, the Storm Weather Shanty Choir. We love hearing from our fans, so send your questions and comments to holdfast@59-north.com, and please do us a favor and review the show on iTunes or wherever else you get your podcasts. Until next time, hold fast.
I made up me mind that I was inclined to go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. I made up me mind that I was inclined to go to sea no more. As I was walking down the street, I met sweet Angeline. She said, "Come home with me, me lad, and we'll have a cracking time." But when I awoke, it was no joke. I found I was all alone. My silver watch and my money too, and my whole bloody gear was gone. Was gone, was gone. My whole bloody gear was gone. It was when I awoke, it was no joke, for my whole bloody gear was gone. As I was walking down the street, I met Big Rapper Brown. I asked him if he would take me in, and he looked at me with a frown. He said,
"Last time you was paid up with me, you talked up no score. But I'll take your advance and I'll give you a chance to go to sea once more. Once more, once more, to go to sea once more. I'll take your advance and I'll give you a chance
to go to sea once more. Sometimes we're catching whales, me lads, but mostly we get none. With a 20-foot oar in every paw from 5 o'clock in the morn. And when daylight's gone and the night's coming on, we rest upon our oars. And oh boys, you wish that you was dead or snug with the girls ashore. Ashore, ashore, or snug with the girls ashore. Oh boys, you wish that you was dead or snug with the girls ashore. Come all you seafaring lads that listen to me song. When you go a big boating, boys, make sure you do not go wrong. You take my tip when you come off a trip, don't go with any whores. But get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. Get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. Get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more.